The sick and elderly desperately waiting for social care. An exclusive ITV News investigation found one council took more than a year to provide support as local authorities in England struggle to cope with the cost.
In this year's budget, we're spending £800,000 a week out of reserves to pay for social care.
After a Tory authority scraps a 15% council tax rise to pay for care, the government is accused of a sweetheart deal. Also tonight, Tunisian security is accused of cowardice over the Sousse massacre that killed 30 Britons. A landmark legal ruling for a woman who's won the right to her late partner's pension. And Tara PalmerTomkinson, socialite and close friend of the royals, has died at the age of 45.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. An ITV News investigation has revealed the unacceptable length of time some elderly and vulnerable people have to wait before they receive the social care they so desperately need. One council told us somebody had to wait 377 days, and 7 other councils in England had people waiting for more than 6 months. The crisis in social care also provoked angry scenes in the Commons today. More on that in just a moment. But our first report tonight is from our health editor, Rachel Younger.
It's not yet dawn, but for some, just getting dressed is an ordeal that can take hours.
I have splints on my feet which are under my socks, and I certainly can't take them off. And so I need help with dressing.
So Lynn relies totally on 71-year-old Michael. He saves the council thousands of pounds taking care of his wife, but the respite he was promised last year, just a couple of hours help with the housework, has never arrived.
I've done it for so long that I just have, you just have to find the energy and the will to say, we'll get through it. But it isn't alive really a lot of the time. Really, I'd love to live a life rather than just go through the motions.
ITV News contacted all 152 councils in England to find out how long people assessed as needing home visits are having to wait for them to begin. 80 responded, with 7 councils telling us they had people waiting for over 6 months. Amongst the worst, North Somerset, which admitted one person with specialist needs, had waited 377 days. In West Hertfordshire, the longest wait was 259 days. And in Kirklees, Michael and Lynn's council, the maximum reported delay was 181 days.
We've all had to take decisions that we thought we'd never have to take.
The council admits any wait is regrettable, but its leader tells me the government's cut £140 million from his budget in the last 4 years. He says soon he won't be able to pay for things like street lighting or rubbish collections, just social care.
At the moment, in this year's budget, we're spending £800,000 a week out of reserves to pay for social care.
How long will those reserves last at that rate?
At that rate, they won't last until after next September.
And then what do you do?
No one can tell us what we can do. The only thing we can do is just stop doing everything else.
You've got your cup of tea and your glass of water.
And remember, there are waits of over 6 months, even in affluent areas like Hertfordshire. Carers there are struggling to meet demand.
Before we could have about 5 or 6 calls in the morning and things, and now that number can go up to about 10 calls in the morning.
Whether it's carers trying to get to everyone in Hertfordshire,
Go on, you're doing a good job.
or relatives picking up the pieces in Yorkshire, the government admits long waits for care are unacceptable. But until that changes, people like Michael will be left to shoulder the burden. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
Well, the cost of social care prompted angry exchanges at Prime Minister's questions today. Jeremy Corbyn claimed leaked messages showed the government had made a sweetheart deal with one Conservative council if they scrapped plans that could have increased council tax by 15% to pay for social care. Our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp, reports.
No council these days would try to pretend that funding social care is not a problem. 3 weeks ago, Surrey Council said it was planning a 15% hike to pay for the costs of elderly care. But the 15% plan was suddenly dropped this week, and no one but the council knew why. Jeremy Corbyn thought he might have the answer and went to Prime Minister's questions earlier with a series of leaked text messages from the Tory leader of Surrey about a deal with the local government department, known as DCLG.
And these texts read, "I'm advised that DCLG officials have been working on a solution and you will be contacting me to agree a memorandum of understanding." Will all councils be offered the same deal?
And there was another text from council leader David Hodge. It suggested he was looking for a way to scrap his planned referendum on the 15% rise. The numbers you indicated are the numbers that I understand are acceptable for me to accept and call off the R, which we presume means referendum. Really want to kill this off. The Prime Minister responded, but you will spot she didn't have any answers.
He comes to the dispatch box making all sorts of claims. Yet again, what we get from Labour are alternative facts. What they really need is an alternative leader.
The referendum in leafy Surrey on the huge hike in council tax was considered a bold and very honest move. Listen to how the council leader justified his plan just 3 weeks ago.
Certainly know the books in Surrey. I've been doing them long enough now, and I know that we do need this money.
With the Chancellor and Health Secretary, both MPs in Surrey, Labour, smell a rat. Something's happened between then and now. Some deal has been done.
Well, I think Jeremy Hunt and Philip Hammond as Surrey MPs were left red-faced when their own county council was proposing this very big hike in council tax because social care has been cut back so severely. I think that something has gone on to spare their blushes.
Surrey County Council said today the decision was ours alone, there was no deal, but the text messages do suggest otherwise. Chris Ship, ITV News.
Well, let's return to Rachel Younger, and it obviously prompts a lot of political problems in itself. But how deep is this social care crisis?
Well, I thought it was pretty shocking last month when we revealed that 1 in 5 councils were still commissioning 15-minute home visits because they simply couldn't afford the half an hour you're supposed to get. But what I think these figures that we found today show is that in some ways, those people were the lucky ones because at least they're getting some kind of care rather than being stuck in limbo, waiting for care that's been promised to start, not just for days or weeks, but for months, in some cases for over a year. Now, some of the councils have told us that these very long waits are often very specialised cases where people need very specialised care or more than one carer. But I think what's also notable is that the government used to have a guideline. Councils used to have to provide this kind of care within 28 days. That guideline has been dropped, and now local authorities face an enormous struggle with billions of pounds in cuts in government funding, combined with a rapidly ageing population. And I think what's almost as shocking as these figures is the fact that the government just doesn't seem to have grasped the urgency of this. We've repeatedly asked for a minister to talk to us about it. They haven't done so. We don't know when the review that's been promised into social care funding by the Prime Minister will begin. Enormous pressure, I think, on the Chancellor in his budget next month.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. And if you would like to share your experiences with us, or indeed you need more information on social care, then go to our website, itv.com/news. On to the rest of the day's news now. And a delay by the Tunisian tourist police and security teams in responding to the terrorist attack in Sousse in 2015 was condemned today as simple cowardice. The inquest into the deaths of 30 Britons also heard it described as deliberate and unjustifiable. Gareth Vincent reports.
When people started running for their lives on the beach in Sousse, armed police should have been rushing to the scene. But instead, their response was slow and stuttering, and people died because of it. That is the view of Tunisian investigators, and a report prepared by the judge who oversaw their inquiry found that the refusal to intervene to stop the terrorist attack was due to simple cowardice when they could have prevented the loss of life. The inquest was told that the tourist security team vehicle patrol and bike patrol deliberately slowed down. Despite being told to get to the scene as soon as possible, they stopped to get more weapons and body armour. But the authorities have found that they were well equipped and that the delay was unjustifiable. The judge concluded that the head of Souss's tourist police could have intervened and stopped the terrorist attack in no more than 3 minutes. In fact, it took him more than 30 minutes to arrive at the scene.
The inquest also heard about 2 armed Coast Guards who got to the hotel while the attack was still going on. One of them fainted due to panic, the court was told, and the other took his uniform off for fear that the terrorist might notice him. This Tunisian assessment of Tunisian security forces has been withering. Geraint Vincent, ITV News at the Royal Courts of Justice.
In the next few hours, MPs will vote on the next significant stage of the Brexit bill. If, as widely expected, the bill is passed, it will go to the House of Lords for further debate and scrutiny. And if the Lords then pass the bill, it will go for royal assent and it will become law. Now, yesterday we reported on how hundreds of thousands of children are starving to death in South Sudan. Tonight, our Africa correspondent reports from a town near the front line where fighting has forced thousands to flee and live rough. John Ray spoke to some of those from Yambio and they told him about their harrowing experiences and their desperate fight for survival.
Dawn breaks in a dusty town and a UN patrol sets off. Anxious faces, for under the very gaze of these peacekeepers, war is raging. In these scorched villages, hundreds have died in recent weeks, a wave of killing that sent thousands more hurrying from their homes, leaving an eerie silence for mile after deserted mile. Then deep in the bush where many have perished, we find men, women and children who've survived by hiding.
Soldiers come, they see you as the enemy, they shoot you.
Your children are out there, sleeping under a tree.
That tree.
For a month now.
Yeah.
South Sudan, born amid so much hope, now burns with ethnic hatred.
From world's newest nation to failed state, South Sudan's decline has been rapid, and nor is that descent over. This is now a land of ruined villages and terrified people.
There is despair among those left behind, members of a minority tribe sheltering in Yambio's school, though here there's little protection from the horrors outside.
I saw somebody that have cut the neck and they ripped the person. I saw the burning body. They have killed somebody and thrown in the houses and they burn it.
Moses is lost and alone, the only son of a mother missing, presumed dead, who speaks to him in his dreams.
She says, sorry for left you alone. Only God will be your sponsor. We will see ourselves in heaven or somewhere else.
15,000 children have been separated from their parents, a traumatized generation. Government and rebels blame each other for the killing. The UN's peacekeepers are no match. Everyone is braced for more fighting and more orphans. John Ray, ITV News, South Sudan.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, a woman's fight for her late partner's pension and how it could lead to radical changes. And the Premier League champions facing relegation and an FA Cup exit to their bitter rivals. Those stories and more after the break. Hello and welcome back. A woman has won a landmark pensions victory that could affect millions of other cohabiting couples. Denise Brewster lived with her partner Lenny McMullen for 10 years. But when he died, she was told she was not entitled to a share of his pension because they weren't married. Well, she claimed discrimination, and today the Supreme Court agreed. Rebecca Barry has more.
Denise Brewster has spent 7 years grieving her long-term partner's death and fighting for their relationship to be recognised by the legal system.
I had to do this for myself and Lenny, and this was as much about me moving on as a person and the importance of our relationship to us.
Lenny and Denise lived together for 10 years, but he died just days after they got engaged. He'd been paying into a local government pension scheme in Northern Ireland, but because they weren't married and he hadn't filled in the relevant form, Denise was told she couldn't claim his pension.
Refusing Miss Brewster a pension was unlawful discrimination.
But today, the highest court in the UK ruled that had breached her human rights and that she is entitled to his pension.
This is the first time that the Supreme Court has ruled on the discrimination of unmarried couples, and lawyers say it's a significant step, extending the rights of cohabiting partners.
Today's judgment brings Northern Ireland in line with England, Wales and Scotland, where local government pension schemes had already been changed. But the ruling could affect many other public sector workers, like nurses, teachers, police and civil servants. In the UK, there are more than 3 million cohabiting couples, so lawyers say it's about time the law was updated. For Denise, it was never just about the money.
This was about our relationship and what we were to each other. Just because we weren't married didn't mean to say that our relationship was any less. I was fighting for our love, and he was worth fighting for.
She says he would be pleased with today's outcome. Rebecca Barry, ITV News. Now, the TV star, socialite and close friend of Prince Charles and the royals, PalmerTomkinson, has died after a year-long battle with a brain tumour. Well, let's get more from our arts editor, Nina Nana. That's very sad news, isn't it? She was often called, wasn't she, the first of the it girls?
Yes, and that's because of her aristocratic background. And when the phrase it girl came into common usage in the 1990s, it was mostly really in connection with her and her social circle. It led in 2002 to an invitation for her to appear on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the very first series of it on ITV. She came second in that series, but she also then told an audience of millions about her very serious drug problem. She had a cocaine addiction, which she talked about, and which actually very nearly killed her. She had stints in rehab, attempts to reinvent herself. What made her life so interesting to the media was those royal connections, her close friendship with Prince Charles. She would holiday with the family, and today he and the Duchess of Cornwall issued a statement saying they were deeply saddened and that their thoughts were so much with the family. As you say, she was diagnosed with a non-malignant brain tumour last year, and she spoke about it very publicly, as she did about her life. So it's a shock today, a real shock.
Really sad news. Nina, thank you very much indeed. The former entertainer Rolf Harris has been cleared of 3 allegations of historical sex offences, but the jury at Southwark Crown Court failed to return a verdict on 4 other counts, which means he could face a retrial. The 86-year-old is currently in jail after being convicted of 12 counts of sex abuse in 2014. Teachers at 2 English schools are using police-style body cameras in an effort to prevent disruptive behaviour by pupils. It's all part of a 3-month experiment. And a passerby caught the spectacular moment. A garden shed toppled off a cliff edge in Devon. It's thought heavy rainfall caused a landslide. And finally, last season, Leicester City made history by winning the Premier League. And they could soon make history again, becoming the first team for 80 years to follow victory with relegation. Well, tonight they face a crucial FA Cup replay against their rivals Derby. Our sports editor Steve Scott is in Leicester this evening. Steve.
Yes, Mary, from champions to kicking boys in no time at all. Leicester's decline, well, is almost as remarkable as their success. They may still be in the Champions League and the FA Cup for the time being, but it's their Premier League form that is making fans here very nervous indeed.
The amazing Leicester City!
A repetition of the fairy tale was, of course, unthinkable, but staring at a drop to the Championship when memories of a citywide street party like no other here are still pretty fresh in the mind was something few envisaged. The club's owner has travelled from Thailand to back Claudio Ranieri tonight and even had time for some housekeeping around the ground. His manager is riding the storm with his usual charm.
The job in the football is this. You win 3 matches, you are good. You lose 3 matches, you aren't good.
Some bookies predict they'll now lose millions if Leicester get relegated, but not in the town itself.
No one wants to back Leicester City to be relegated. They'd rather see them either win the FA Cup or the Champions League at the minute.
And you're getting interest in that market?
We're getting massive interest, especially on an FA Cup Champions League double, which we can always keep our fingers crossed, but let's just see how we get on tonight.
The only other team to get relegated as champions was Manchester City in 1936. So if it does happen, it really would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Just not a good one. Steve Scott, ITV News, Leicester.
And that is all from the evening news tonight. Raggy Omar is here later with news at 10. From me and all the team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.